And there's a note that just came up that says the meeting is being recorded. And the intent there is to have a video available following the presentation and discussion tonight, so that that'll be posted on BC Nature's website. And then you can go back to that and you can use it however it suits you. You may want to share some portion or all of it with your club at a meeting, or you may want to refer back to something just for the information to use for your own purposes. So it is being recorded. There will be no individual identifiers or anything shared with the public or on the video. So when people are doing report backs, they just give the information. They don't give their name and location or anything like that. So hope you're okay with that. And so I'd like to move along here then. I guess I'm gonna I can take this. Got it. There we go. Why am I not my slides moving here? There we go. Oh. Is that
nope,
where we
there we
go. Went 2 slides ahead.
Quick note to everyone on the recording: if you're not comfortable, you can just turn your video off. And yeah, a note that we will not be recording individual breakout sessions later on. Yeah,
there we go. In terms of the general format that we're looking at for this evening, I'll tell you a tiny bit about myself. We'll find out a little bit about you folks and where your interest in this topic comes from. I've got some information to present about this issue and how we came to be interested in it here in Salmon Arm, and what we learned when we got involved in trying to affect how wildfire mitigation and fuel reduction was being done in our parks. And we've got a couple of breakouts, so opportunities for you to discuss this topic and where you're at in your communities and what you might do moving forward. So that, I mean, ultimately we want to see communities involved in making changes so that we do this right, because it's the impacts of doing it wrong can be quite significant. We'll check in with you near the end to see where we're at and what you'd like to see going forward, and we'll wrap up from there. So that's the general flow of the evening. In terms of who I live here in Salmon Arm. I've been here for 5 years, came from Edmonton, where I was a professor in outdoor and environmental leadership. I did a lot of academic coursework in wildland conservation and areas like that. I ended up being the chair of our Urban Woodland Parks Committee in our naturalist club, the Shuswap Naturalist Club here in Salmon Arm, very active club. I'm also an ecological reserve warden at Mount Griffin, and now Campbell Brown. And our rattlesnakes are just coming out now, so we're very excited. We even have babies. I was the co-chair of the Alberta Forest Conservation Strategy for 3 years with the Deputy Minister. Very active process there. And I'm a past president of the Alberta Wilderness Association so I've been involved in conservation issues for about 40 years now. And so this one really captured my interest because I saw it's urgent that we do something and that we get this rolling out better in our parks across the province. So so let's find out a little bit about you. The first poll question, I'll hand this off to Kefra. There we go. So you've got a poll question there. If you can just answer the general region that you live in currently, and tell us where you're, then you'll have to scroll on the second question, I guess, a bit. So where your community is at with respect to wildfire mitigation in its park. Have they started doing fuel reduction in your parks? Have you seen changes in the parks? Have they started but not done much yet? Have they been applying for funding but not started work? Or if you don't know, you don't know. Like, that's okay. We're just trying to get a sense of where this is at in different parts of the province, and just to be able to tailor the presentation a little bit more to where you're at. So if you can answer those two questions, and then
Yeah, it looks like all of the questions got put up at once by accident, but yeah, feel free to answer all of them if you want. But yeah, we're just starting with the first two there. All right, we'll give another 20 seconds, and then I'll end this poll. All right, so I'm going to share the results here.
okay, so folks on the coast, mainland, and Thompson, Okanagan, and Kootenay.
Nice. And looks like the majority of folks don't know where they're at right now.
Okay. Well, that's okay. Then chances are, you know, most of you are probably fairly active in your communities. So you would see if they were doing this kind of work. So it probably means they haven't started, or they're just in the planning stages. Because we know that there's money there, and that there's a sense that we need to get going on some of this sort of stuff. So it's good if we're at the front end. That's perfect. Okay. Let's see, why am I? There we go. So what's a healthy forest as a start point? Because this is ultimately what we want to get to. And I think most of us would agree that a healthy forest is one that's has an abundance of plants and animals, offers a variety of habitats, from things that like dense forest to things that like open meadows, have trees of different age and size composition, has robust root systems in the plants, so it helps control erosion and keep the water clean. And natural healthy forest is on the younger side versus the old side, and so is more resistant to unnaturally large and severe fires. Forest benefits for people, in addition to all those things that help keep a forest healthy. We rely on our forests to help to clean our air and our water and moderate climate. You can see the difference in the heat dome effects if you're in downtown Vancouver compared to a place like Salmon Arm, where I've got 5 trails within 5 minutes of my house that I can walk for an hour or two in the woods and never cross a road. Forests provide us with health, fitness opportunities, like mental and spiritual health, our fitness, recreation. We walk, we bike, we do all kinds of cross-country ski, do all kinds of activities. It's where we connect with nature, whether we're bird watching or just being in nature and listening and enjoying it, smelling it. And aesthetics. We like to see natural areas within our communities. And for those folks who are Indigenous, natural park areas or natural areas are fundamental to their cultural and spiritual values. So why are we having all these hot fires? We've got climate change that's resulting in hotter temperatures and droughts. Yes, we had El Nino this last year, which made it even worse, but El Nino by itself wouldn't have been as drastic, had as drastic effects as under climate change. And we've had so many decades of fire suppression. We've been fighting any fire as fast as possible almost, and that's resulted in older forests and a massive fuel buildup in the forest. So now when they get going, it's very hard to get them out.
Glenda, on that, we've just got a question in the chat.
Sure.
Wondering did you say old forests are more susceptible to fires? Kind of building on that last point there.
They can be if they've been under fire suppression. Then you've got a large fuel buildup in the forest, as opposed to a young forest that's got more deciduous composition, more understory. Like when you get to just a canopy forest, It's not letting light in. You're not having the meadows and things like that that give you more habitats and just more resiliency. So when you do get a fire, because you've got all this fuel built up, that's why we're getting a major part of why we're getting such severe fires, because you've got they generate their own weather. There's when you've got heat, oxygen, and fuel, that's when you get fire. And because we've got so much fuel, that's why they're doing these fuel mitigation projects in the parks, to try to reduce the fuel buildup, so that if you do get a fire in your parks, they're not going to be as severe as they would be with all the fuel there. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah. I mean, we love old growth forests too, but not every forest should be an old forest. The healthiest forests are younger than what we have. We tend to have a lot of old forests because of all the fire suppression we've done. And it's not helping us in this situation with climate change. So when we do get these large scale, high severity wildfires, they're very, very hot. And so they end up affecting the soil's absorption ability, because the top layer just gets burned so dry that it doesn't let moisture penetrate. And so then you get soil running off. You get the inability of plants to readily regenerate. They get completely burned. And so it's very hard. It kills roots and seeds and everything. So it's very hard for things to get started again. You get extensive loss of habitat and animal life, animal displacement. And you get impacts when we're talking about urban parklands. Of course, we're concerned that fires that start or penetrate an urban parkland can affect adjacent infrastructure, our homes and municipal structures, roads, and so on. And so we do need to do something to address the fuel buildup, while still hopefully keeping our parks something that we would want to be in. So when the province saw and it's been dealing with this for a long time on Crown lands. So it has a set of prescription guidance document that it uses to address fuel. And it's just about fuel. Like, you don't see in that title anything about balancing objectives with anything else. It does provide some lip service if you read line by line, but it wasn't written at all with urban parks in mind. It only requires balancing objectives where there are legal requirements to do so. And significantly, it prioritizes the retention of large size trees. Right? So if you've already got old forests, so big trees, hardly any younger trees, and you're going to prioritize removing the smaller trees in favor of keeping the larger trees, you're only going to make the problem worse in terms of trying to get to a healthy forest composition. So when we got involved in this, BC Nature wrote the minister because they saw that this is a problem across the province. And the deputy minister, Manwaring, came back and said that, well, BC Parks and BC Wildlife Service do collaborate on guidelines that recognize that things may look different in parks and protected areas, because you're trying to conserve these other values. So our municipalities haven't been made aware of that. They're just aware of the fuel management guidelines because that's what they're told to follow. So our job is to make sure that they are aware that this looks different in parks, where you're trying to provide for forest conservation and park user values. So that's the key question. How do we address the excessive fuel buildup in our urban parks so that people are not as afraid that their house is going to burn down if the park catches on fire, while conserving the forest ecology, in fact, enhancing it in some cases? Like, we think you could take down some big trees to create some meadows and other things like that. It's not against nature, and considering park user values. So in Salmon Arm, we got interested in this a couple of summers ago. A local silviculture company was contracted by the city They wrote the application for funding, which is done through the Union of BC Municipalities. That's who actually does the funding for these projects. And they did the work. They had no public consultation process, so nobody talked to us or anyone else. And they followed the fuel management guidelines. So they weren't breaking the law, like they were doing what they were told to do, which is follow the fuel management guidelines. But as part of that, they sold the small trees for fence posts. We were finding these big piles of logs. And so they were targeting all these 6 to 8 inch trees, and there'd be big stacks of them, and then they'd sell them off and put the money into, doing more treatments apparently. But so we members like me that walk in the parks every day said, whoa, what's going on here? Like, if you look at this picture, you can take a minute and look around, but there's at least 10 stumps there, and they're all small sized trees. And you can see those are healthy trees that were all taken down in favor of leaving the big trees. And we went, no, that's not cool. The understory has been completely destroyed. There's no deciduous there. The birds are gone. The squirrels are gone. There's, you can see for, hundreds of meters where before you couldn't see more than, 100 meters at most. And you can hear the road noise more now. So we thought this is not cool. It's not good for wildlife, and it's not good for people. And it's a park in the middle of the city. So we established a committee, this Urban Woodland Parks Committee within our Naturalist Club. We toured the site with the proponents, so had them explain what they were doing and why. And we sat down. We had biologists in our group, and people that come from a variety of perspectives. And we wrote down what do we think about this? What do we like about it? What don't we like? What would we like to see done in the future so that they don't destroy the values of the park? You can see by this picture that it looks like kind of just a stem stand. It's sterile. Anything, as high as you can reach, as far as you can see, and you can see a lot further. So we requested changes. And I contacted BC Nature, started working with Kefra and with Peter Ballin and the president and board, and Alan wrote the ministry and got back a response, which basically was what I shared earlier. So that was the end of it, we thought. And then they came back a little bit later and said, with a new round, it invited the public to an open house. And we thought, oh God, they're going to do more of the same, because they didn't tell us they were changing anything, but they had changed everything. They hired a new company. They gave them the criteria that included considering forest conservation and park user values. And so now this is a picture of Park Hill, one of the 2 parks they're going to be treating. They're going to be focusing on getting, woody debris off the ground, except for decaying logs, conserving the ground cover and deciduous as much as they can, pruning 3 meters up or up to 50% of small trees, removing small to medium-sized trees only when they're presenting a ladder issue. That's where, fire that catches on one tree is likely going to start. Is spread to a bigger tree. They're treating only one band along a main trail where they think that particular park is prone. If a fire starts in it, it's probably because of people along that trail. And in the other park, they're focusing on going only 100 meters from subdivisions and along a major road. So quite a different approach. And not saying that this is what you should do in your communities but you need to have a chance to have a discussion about what would this look like in our community? What would it look like to reduce fuel while conserving these other values? So our learning from this is that, first of all, as a local club, you can have an impact. What the city came back with on this round is completely consistent with what we asked for. And that wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have gotten involved. They would have just spun out the fuel management guidelines again, and a lot of the values in this park would have potentially been destroyed. And now there's a precedent set for allowing funding for projects that do this kind of balancing in the municipal parks. All righty, So enough of me talking. It sounds like you haven't had a lot of work undertaken in your parks at this point, so you can probably ignore the first part here and go straight to the second part, and we'll give you a chance to chat. Now, I don't know how many people we have, and
We've got about 30 people, so I'm gonna put people into groups of, say, 5 or 6. And so we're in a minute, I'm going to put people into individual breakout groups is what they're called. And they're separate rooms for everyone to have an open discussion about these points that Glenda is covering here. And I'm focusing on these 2 questions. And I'll note that we're going to pause the recording for that. So please feel comfortable to have an open discussion amongst yourselves. And we'll do that for about 8 to 9 minutes. And once that's over, everyone will come back together into this large group. And hopefully 1 or 2 people from each groups might be willing to share some of the discussions that they had in their individual breakout rooms.
yeah, probably just
that
one
doesn't make
person per
sense-
group to report back. So if you can identify somebody to do that towards the end of your discussion, and the report backs again will be, 1 minute to 2 minutes, just to get a flavor for what the conversations are. So that'd be fantastic. You ready to put them in groups? You got them in groups?
So let's do 4 breakout rooms. It's gonna just assign people automatically, but I'll be in this main area if people are having trouble getting in there. So there should be a little pop-up that comes up with the room that you've been invited to, and just click join and you should go there. So I'm gonna pause it.
Welcome back, everyone. Okay, let's hear from you. Who's gonna go first? Can somebody summarize what happened in their group? Just start talking.
Okay, well, I'll talk real briefly. There is a very few numbers of us. 2 live rurally, and I'm concerned between a 70-acre parcel of land and a 1-acre parcel of land about what might be done. I live in a small community on the island, right near the water, but neither of the 3 of us were aware of much of anything that has been done at this point, and see the value for sure, whether there's forest or grassland. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Who's next?
Well, I'm in Kamloops, and I'm with the Grasslands Conservation Council, but I'm with the Kamloops Naturalists, and basically when you're doing work in the dry interior communities, you're looking at opening up the forest quite a bit, reducing the stems per hectare, keeping the larger trees, reducing the number of smaller trees, tends to enhance shrub growth and reduce the fuels and take out the ladder fuels. So that's what we do in these drier ponderosa pine, dry Douglas fir forest in this area. And Kamloops Parks has done quite a bit of that work. It's not always looked on favorably at the start because they create a bunch of piles of small trees and then get rid of them, but it results in a much healthier park.
Oh yeah, have you actually seen regrowth of shrubs? Because when we walked with the proponent here, looking at Little Mountain Park, they said literally it would be 20 years before you see shrubs growing there. So,
Oh, it takes time, but they don't grow in stands where you've got Douglas fir touching each other, all these small trees. You're not going to get any shrub growth there. There you just get fuel growing together. And so it takes time here. But when those forests have been getting denser for 30, 40 years, the shrubs just aren't necessarily sitting there waiting to come back in.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing you have is when you've got canopy forests like that, there's no light penetrating to grow anything new. So some opening up of areas, like taking down some big trees, we think is not a bad thing, to open up some meadows and create some more diversity in the habitats and opportunities for grasses and shrubs to come in. Because otherwise, yes, that's part of the fuel management guidelines, is just take down all the small trees and leave all the big ones. But that doesn't lead to a healthy forest for a very, very long time, is what we're actually hearing. So it's one way to do it. We don't think it's the only way to do it. And so we can have differences of opinion, and that's fine. And it depends on the particular environment and what what will work in that place. And so it's bringing all the best science to bear and considering what are the values of that area. And if nobody's going to want to go there for 20 years, because that's how long it's going to take to get anything else growing in there, and it's just going to be a stem stand till then, well, I don't know. Anybody else? Another comment, another speaker, please. Did you have anything from other people in your group, or you just talked?
No, we had our moderator there, and but he knows the island situation better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, that was me, and wasn't really a moderator.
Oh, I thought you were the moderator. You sounded like you were organized, Bruce.
No, I'm not. I was just another participant like yourself.
Okay.
And then there was two others in the group that were fairly quiet too. But yeah, so I was talking about the Gary Oak and so on ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
Actually require to be maintained by fire to some degree.
Sure.
In order to burn off the encroaching firs, which
yeah.
Even though it's called coastal Douglas fir, we like our Gary Oaks too.
Yes, exactly. Well, and fire itself isn't unnatural. It's an important part of the ecosystem and ecosystem processes. The problem is that we've just created situations through our fire suppression and climate change that are now making those fires so hot that they're so severe that they can be really damaging. And so we have to do something. And so what does that look like in our urban parks, which might be different than in other crown lands?
Glenda, we've got a question in the chat. What size are the urban parks that you're working with?
There's quite a variety. Ours here are about, the ones that we're dealing with are 40 to 100 hectares, the ones that they're treating right now here in Salmon Arm. But that's going to vary by community and by, how much parkland you have within the municipal boundaries. Is there anybody else that would like to report? We'll give you 10 seconds and then we'll go on to the next question.
Okay, I will say something. I didn't hear anything in our group. There was no audio. So I have a comment on my own.
Sure.
It's that I was concerned about soil compaction in the logging that was done during the summer or fall. And there's no ground cover left, of course. And this all went on in our community forest, which is actually not urban forest, but it's treated like one. People from the town all use it.
Oh, yeah.
In part of the community forest, there was thinning done, and they did it during the winter. So they were driving while the soil was frozen, and the understory in that area is returning. So maybe that's one way to get away from soil compaction.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, so we think that some of the impacts here were from them using too heavy of equipment, driving around to take out these small trees. They were creating new trails with the equipment they were using, where the guys that are going in this summer won't be using that kind of equipment and will be much more careful about preserving the deciduous and understory and not destroying it intentionally or unintentionally. So it'll get a better chance to grow even more. So
Okay.
good point. Thanks, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next question then. And let's see if we can get that happening here. Somehow things seem to freeze up here a bit. There we go. So if you think that this is relevant, the idea of trying to conduct effective wildfire reduction, I wanted to make one point about wildfire reduction. A lot of people are concerned about fire spreading from a park into residences and things like that. And we just had a town hall meeting with a presenter who's done a lot of this kind of research. And he said that that is not the concern, that it's not flames coming from a park or adjacent lands, it's the embers. That's what you have to be concerned about. And so if you put your emphasis on the structures, on making sure that people are fire smarting their properties so that the embers don't have anything to catch on to burn their house down, then a lot less houses will burn down. So I found that interesting, that it reduces this fear that you can't have parks with trees in them because then your houses are going to burn down. And really what we need to do is be focusing on the fire smarting of our properties, which I think a lot of us probably have some work to do in that. It's very hard. It's hard to give up trees and shrubs. So anyway, I wanted to share that. But what, if anything, can you do moving forward to help ensure that any wildfire mitigation work undertaken in your communities, municipal parklands, is done with a balanced approach? Do you have a group you can work with? And if so, what might that look like? So we'll give you a chance to chat about that, and for another we'll say 6 minutes, and then we'll have a quick report back and move to closing. Welcome back. Welcome back. Awesome. Would somebody like to share back what they chatted with in their group? Chatted about in their group? We only went with 2 groups this time because we thought it might be more opportunity. It sounded like there was a few folks that didn't have too much to say, so. Anybody?
Well, I'll speak. So
Yeah.
we had a larger group, and I felt like we did all the talking. And so Doreen and Chris and I here, we're from the Okanagan. So it is interesting because we live in fire interfaces. I mean, we do have urban park, but we're in fire interface. So our interests are somewhat divergent than someone like Sean, who talked at the end, which was interesting because, yeah, he's concerned about urban parks and like having the sticks and no undergrowth. But yeah, so I don't know. The group is quite diverse, and the interests are diverse, and the concerns are diverse. All this is done for me. Thank you very much. Glenda, is like, I want to ask more questions. What's going on in urban?
Yeah. Awesome. Somebody from the other group, please. Anybody?
I think we just heard that there was a variety. Like I mentioned, I'm from the drier country, but then the folks at the coast, they basically said there hasn't been a whole lot done yet in a lot of those areas, but they do recognize they're getting drier, and so it might need some work on the island and other coastal areas.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, and that's one of the key points, that this can look different in different parts of the province based on what the tree composition is, what a healthy forest actually looks like. But we had the Columbia Shuswap Regional District a meeting just a while ago with foresters that have been studying this stuff for ages, and they're saying, you know, our biggest problem is that our forests are generally getting old. They're not healthy because they're not diverse. They don't have enough deciduous. They don't have enough variety and habitats and biodiversity in them. And when you look at this just on the face of it, if we're taking down all the small trees in favor of leaving the big trees, we're not doing anything to address that. We're just making it worse. So I think that BC Nature has the right idea and BC Parks has the right idea that you need to look at where you are setting parks aside. How do you do that in a way that helps preserve these other values and try to work towards the healthiest ecosystem possible? And it might be a longer term project in some areas, and it might be a shorter term one in others. So but the public should have some input into that, because these are their parks. These are where they go to connect with nature and to be active. So, awesome. Moving on here.
Just a question. I just had a question, Glenda. You did
Sure.
mention BC Parks just now, so you're aware that BC Parks is on top of this and knows what the legislation is and is did it partner with you folks down there?
No, you know, that's the thing, is that BC Parks does not have a formal role in municipal parklands, does it? And so the province has BC Wildfire Service fuel management guidelines, and it allows BC Parks to vary from those guidelines in order to achieve these other values: conservation values, recreation values, cultural heritage values. So it's recognizing that. But then urban parklands are falling into this neverland in the middle, where what we need to be moving towards is getting recognition that BC Parks approach is probably going to be more consistent with what citizens are going to want in the parks in their urban areas, right? They're not going to want what's necessarily best out in the crown lands far away from the city. They want to have birds around. They want to have you know, opportunities to feel like they're in a forest. You know, the image that I picked on this screen here is a relatively young, you can see mixed age and size composition, rich undergrowth. And that's less and less what many of our forests are looking like, and what that's more closer to the definition of a healthy forest. And that's what BC Parks is trying to work towards in parks that it manages. So we probably need some research done on how do we get to the best criteria for urban parks. And as I said, it might look differently. Like, one of the things in Salmon Arm is that the fire department is actually who houses the Fire Smart program in the city. And they're very happy with the new approach, because they say our response times are good in Salmon Arm. We can have, you know, less of this intrusive take out all the small trees approach, because we can manage fires in the city. If they get started, we can be on them very quickly. So we don't worry about them spreading to municipal structures or residences. So that said, question is, would you like BC Nature to host another seminar like their webinar like this? And if yes, would you like something next fall, so you have a chance to find out what's going on in your community, see if there is anything planned, chat with your own club if you've got a group that might be interested in the more proactive. We didn't find out about this until they had gone in and done a lot of treatment in a park, that we just said, whoa, we don't want to see that. And there's a lot of our members won't even go to that park anymore. They're just so heartbroken because they never see birds or anything. If yes, in 7 to 9 months, like more time to get going on it. And if no, that's fine. And if you don't know, that's fine. So maybe just if everybody could respond to the poll, please.
And maybe while people are doing that, there's one more comment in the chat.
Okay.
They're wondering if you could comment on the work that has occurred in Stanley Park recently.
I can't really, I've read articles on it, but I really haven't gotten involved. And but it's very much the same type of issue, isn't it? It's what do people want and what's the outcome is important, but the process is important too. Are we just, handing it off to the people that are looking at the fuel management guidelines, or are we involving the public in a meaningful way so that they're on side with what's happening and or they can influence what's happening? And we've shown you that here in Salmon Arm, we had a huge influence on what's happening. So our parks will get reduced fire risk, significantly reduced fire risk, while still conserving these other values. And so we feel like it's worth spending some time and energy doing that in a proactive way. There we go. So about almost half want to do something in 4 to 6 months, and most of the rest want to do something in 7 to 9 months. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And Kefra, you and I will chat some more and we'll get something going. And in the meantime, we will post this video so that you can take it and chat with your club and see if there's things happening or that you want to connect with someone in your municipality to see if they're going after any of these projects. And because there's funding available for these projects, like Salmon Arm got $150,000 for the work they're doing this summer from the Union of BC Municipalities. So it's there, and it's important work. So nobody's saying don't reduce fuel risk. It's do it in a smart way that preserves these other values. Oh, there we go. And so I think that we're going to move to close. It's 8 o'clock. And thank you, Kefra, for all the help that you gave me and support here for everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and sharing your thoughts. And most of all, thank you for going forward. Do something in your community. And even if it's reaffirming what's already happening, that's fine. Get involved and practice some leadership if you can. And we'll see you in sometime between probably 6 to 7 months.
Great. Thank you so much, Glenda. I'm going to stop recording now.